So in the last topic, we explored how the ego, through the urge of short-term gratification, will fill our voids, for the sake of our happiness. And over time, how this doesn't necessarily work out as well as we expected. And we will see why that happens in the next topic. But I wanted to explore in a little bit more depth in this topic how the ego will create attachment to our identity as it fills these voids. The wise ancients have spoken of how attachment leads to suffering, and that in life, pain is inevitable, but the suffering, the attachment, is optional. So let's explore how the ego attaches things to our identity in the search for happiness. As I mentioned in earlier modules, our soul, our life force, or our essence, however you see it for yourself, philosophically or spiritually, is born into this body. For the purposes of illustration, the tiny circle is our life force or our essence. The bigger circle is symbolic of our body. As we grow up, we experience stories of life. Some are pleasant and create pleasure in our life, which is subconsciously remembered. Some are not as pleasant and activate our base fears and pain, again, which is subconsciously remembered. We could say that these pains and fears become our voids as the ego urges us towards pleasure through our core beliefs, our thoughts and our behaviors, addressing the symptoms and not the cause. Now, with the example in the previous topic, Mike was feeling low self-worth and inadequate as he compared himself to his friends. The ego urged him to work hard to get that promotion so he could buy stuff to make himself feel better about himself. He bought that expensive car to compensate for his low self-worth, effectively filling this void with that car. Now, in the process, the car attached to him as it became part of his worth. And through this process, it became an extension of his identity. This is that subconscious feeling of, if I feel good about myself because of the car I drive, then I am the car I drive. The same could be said about the big house he lived in, the awesome stuff he bought, the job title he had, and even that perfect partner he has. They attached to him as they filled his voids. The ego, in its search for happiness in the external world to fill our voids, attaches many other things to our identity. That degree I have, the school I went to, the clothes I wear, the type of friends I have, the holiday destinations I go to, or how my physical body looks, for example. I'm not implying that we all have degrees or relationships to fill our voids. What I am suggesting is that we look at why we have them and how we define ourselves through them. Is it a degree that supports the work I love doing, or do I have the degree to impress others and boost my self-importance? Through this attachment, we create additional suffering if we go through loss. For example, if we lose our job, we will naturally go through the pain of separation from our financial security. But if we define our identity by our job because it filled our void of self-worth, we will have an additional suffering on top of the pain. That job is effectively ripped from our void and leaves that fear of self-worth exposed, no longer filled or protected by the job title we had. The same could be said for a divorce or a relationship breakup. We ask ourselves, who am I without my partner? And this loss in self-worth and identity adds suffering to the pain of separation from our partner. Now, when it comes to the attachment of success, ego defines this by the amount of money we have. Personally, I love money, but it's not my master. If I have money, I have more creativity and time to do what I love. So I'm not saying money does not buy you happiness and that it's not important. But if I'm relying on money to define my success and my identity, it could be detrimental to my well-being, especially if I do not have money or I experience a financial loss. The irony is the ego can get you into so much debt. In its search for happiness, you'll never get rich. Robert Kiyosaki, in his book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, talks about how people who want to look rich go into debt to look rich and ultimately never get wealthy, whilst the truly wealthy drive their old cars, wear their cheaper clothing brands until they have enough money invested, which could then adequately support the expensive cars and the finer things in life that they buy later. Now, without awareness, we can make the external world responsible for our happiness and our identity. But here's the question, can it guarantee meeting our expectations? What if we lose our job and no longer have that job title and must sell our expensive cars, homes, and awesome stuff to get by? If we are relying on these external factors solely for our self-worth and we cannot afford the finer things in life, are we then going to be unhappy for the rest of our lives because we cannot have what we think will make us happy or because we do not feel worthy? Since nothing is permanent in this VUCA environment, I feel it's a big risk to rely on the environment for our identity and our happiness. There is another reason why our ego happiness cannot be guaranteed by the environment. We get used to whatever we rely on for our happiness in the external world, particularly when it comes to the awesome stuff, the jobs, the cars, even our personal relationships. And we will explore this in more detail in the next topic. As we get used to stuff that once made us happy but no longer does, we then need more stuff to stay happy. And so we go into this downward spiral of seeking happiness out there, which becomes a thirst that can never be quenched. So in summary, the ego looks to this external world for our happiness, this ego happiness. And if we are going to become more accountable for our long-term state of well-being, it is important to step in and be mindful of our choices we make as to what will make us happy in the long term. It is also important to have less identity attached to these external factors that our ego relies on for our happiness. If we don't, we could end up working at jobs we hate, to buy things we don't need, to impress the people we do not like. And we'll never be happy because we'll be constantly trying to fill these voids which can never be filled from the outside. We will explore in later modules ways on how we can manage our well-being as opposed to ego happiness, especially when it comes to the inner work around our identity. But for now, it's about becoming mindful of that subconscious urge created by the ego to go on that retail therapy, for example, where we buy clothes on credit so we can feel good about ourselves, or to buy that expensive looking car because it makes us look successful. Again, I'm not saying we must not enjoy the finer things in life. What I am suggesting is to begin reflecting on why we want what we want to make us happier, and to reflect, is it addressing the symptom and not the cause of our unhappiness? Now in the next topic, as promised, we will be looking at 3 reasons why we get it wrong if we let the ego choose our happiness for us. These are scientifically based. So yes, I look forward to seeing you there. And as we finish off this topic, I leave you with a quote by Cullen Hightower. Our ego is our silent partner, too often with the controlling interest. So I will see you in the next topic, and until then, take care and stay aware.